Okay, so today's Clogcast, Carlogcast, is going to be brought to us by the letter V. V for vaccinations. So vaccinations is like the main thing at the moment. We're kind of stuck in various states of lockdown, various states of people running around with COVID, not staying at home, being non-household contacts, disease contacts. We've got all sorts of terms for what's going on, but we seem to be in a massive holding pattern where we can't get the number down to zero, and people are accepting, yet zero might not be an option we can look at, which kind of sucks, but maybe the reality we've got to live with. But vaccines, it's all about vaccines. So there's huge amounts of information and misinformation, particularly coming from where, the United States, of course, and I think it is good mentioning some of them. Now, we haven't been having to think about all these vaccine crazy things because our vaccine plan/program was so slow and we didn't actually have vaccines. But since our friends in Spain and Denmark and wherever else have given us vaccines, it's open season now. And so we now have to confront some of the sticky issues with vaccines. And one that's come up in the last week, which I think shows where we are in the world, is Nicki Minaj's her cousin's brother or something's balls. This is from the creative who brought you the song WAP. I'll let you look it up what that stands for, but the lyrics are pretty detailed what it's all about. We've now got BAB, big ass balls. So he is claiming that he had a COVID vaccine and his balls have just massively increased in size. I think it was one side or both sides. And he was going to get married, but then now that's all off because of the size of these juggernauts. Which, and he's in Jamaica or Trinidad, and so it's put the marriage off. Now, of course, it's more weird than that. So, vaccine expert Nicki Minaj has been telling people that, and the main problem is not the size of his balls, and no one's actually given an update, as far as I can see, as to what's happening with his genitalia. Did they go down? What did they do? Did they ice it? Did they figure out nothing happened? Your balls can increase for other things, but the vaccination, that would be different. You can get it with things like mumps orchitis, but who knows? So a lot of mask wearing now. This is impressive, Auckland. This is impressive. And so, so he has got his BABs, and what vaccine expert Nicki Minaj is claiming is that the White House is trying to contact her about it. Now, this is the White House, and they are lying that they were trying to contact and they didn't contact her and they never followed up. And of course, some people are so keen to look for a reason not to vaccinate. They point to this like, look, the government's lying. And I guess, that may be true, and I don't think you'd find a government that hasn't, quote, lied, but I wouldn't say that would change the opinion you should make on a life-saving intervention. But it seems like, of course, it's having an effect, and it's getting some mileage, probably because it's, Nicki Minaj as well, and it's a story about genitalia. So I understand her PR team has been in contact with the White House. That much is probably true. But if you're going to cook up a PR story, you definitely want to have someone like Nicki Minaj and somehow put grotesque genitalia into it to make it stick a bit better. Anyway, so this has been another reason in the arsenal of don't get vaccinated. And so our vaccination rate has come under a bit more spotlight now because we had a change up to the 1 o'clock press conference. Now, I'm not sure this is a complete success. It was probably more of a backfire. But they had the guy with the amazing laptop, our data modelist, come and say, look, you need to get a vaccine. But of course, this is a huge setup and a bit of a faux pas, in my opinion, because everyone looks at the data modelists, and I think we've got really good respect and appreciation for what these guys do now, whereas previously I wouldn't have known any data modelists. But the number one data modelist for the government, he was being put in a position where I think people are going to definitely ask him, so what vaccine rate do we need to end this? And of course, he's a data modeler. He's not, it's not a pure science in that he can give us some risk and some ideas, but that modeling hasn't been successful anywhere in the world. And the media are really looking for the number. So I think he got a huge hospital pass. And of course, the media are using some of his numbers even as not flimsy, but as they might need some more working on to be more sure about them. Whoa. This guy, crazy driving. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. Anyway, it's still level 3, so we don't want to get in a car accident because, yeah, that could be messy, trying to get a panel beater, etc. And so, yeah, so he was put in a position, let's give us a number of vaccination, give us a number to end lockdown. So he dodged it, more vaccination is better, blah, 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 and a bit of a wet blanket thing. I mean, if you want those kind of, there's an art to how you say that, and I think this is where politicians really earn their money, how they can message that to give people hope and not freak people out and get the principle across without being specific. And the government doesn't want to use a target, and I think a target will be a major slippery slope, because we've seen where targets, and nobody's successfully used a target. Once you use a target, I think that does set up a psychological feeling like, well, we're kind of going to get there even if I don't get vaccinated, so I won't. And we've seen that recently. It wasn't that long ago, measles was the big news. And of course, there's a good decent chunk of people who weren't keen on the vaccination, but measles didn't really exist because of the good amount of vaccination around them, and you can sit on your hands a bit. Now, we seem to know from coronavirus, there is no number overseas. There is, higher is better, yeah, that's good. So they flipped the script a little bit, and the media picked up on how many deaths can we report? And they came up with a number of 7,000, which is a high number. It's a scary number. So once again, this is a political messaging, psychological thing. Do you tell people a number that's going to make it so scary that they don't trust it? Or do you make a number that is going to scare people into vaccination? Now, I think one of the main drivers of people who are in the reluctant or hesitant group seems to be, and I wouldn't even put them in the hesitant group, the group that just hasn't got around to it, is if the thing is in your face. So in Auckland, it's kind of in our face. And we haven't had just astronomical numbers, but we've had pretty high numbers compared to the rest of New Zealand. And wouldn't you know it, our vaccination, particularly in level 4, we're above 80%. And so that's another reason why you don't want to have a number, because if people turn on the news and they go, how come Sydney's saying 70%? And we're at 80%, by the way. So, yeah. So anyway, slippery slope. So because Aucklanders felt it, it's really high. Now, the Maori vaccination rate is 50%. So how does that work? So that just tells me there's a whole lot of people who identify as Maori who don't live in Auckland. And, yeah, I mean, fair enough that I think you don't push super hard and fast in some respects with groups that haven't seen COVID, and they're not likely to see it in the current future. I mean, I think you're probably best off listening, giving people the information, but I mean, you try and do a vaccination campaign for diphtheria. Nobody's ever seen it. You have to then create a story. So I think it's a little bit about product market fit. And at the moment, there is a huge market for Aucklanders to get vaccinated, because we've got this huge drive where we can see the effects of COVID all around and restrictions. But you know, if you're in the South Island, they're kind of saying, well, we should be at level 1, and presumably some people are living more of a level 1 or level 0 lifestyle because they haven't had a case of COVID in a year. So anyway, other vaccine crazy stuff, I will try and find the video of the magnetic girl. It's just too good. And you can see you can see, I'll put a thing so I remember where to do it. Magnetic
Explain to me why
girl.
the key sticks
Magnetic
to me.
lady. This is a long time ago now, but when we
Sticks to
didn't
my
have a
neck, too.
vaccination program or vaccines, we were watching from afar, but now we've got vaccines, we can start
Yeah,
talking
so
about
if
the
somebody
more
could explain
crazy
this,
aspects
that would
and
be
interesting bits. So a whole lot of anti-vaxxer pain, and you can just imagine
Any
they're like,
questions?
yeah, this is a chance. And they had their heroine, in this case, go up and take the stand and demonstrate that she had magnetic powers following the vaccine. And I saw some people in the mainstream media talking about it. Probably not worth talking about in the mainstream media because
Explain
it's
to me
so
why
out
the
there.
key sticks to
But
me.
anyway, so she stuck a piece of
It sticks to
metal,
my neck, too.
she pushed a piece of metal on her body and then tries to sort of angle it to demonstrate it's
Yeah, so if
magnetic.
somebody could explain this, that would be
And
great.
I think if you were the chair group behind her going, yeah, there's that chance,
Any
you'd be
questions?
going, okay, you're on your own with this one. Because apparently but just before going in, she put something on her skin and then thought, look, this is magnetic. And yeah, she tries to stick various things on her body. Presumably she's gone home and just tried to attach different pots and pans to her just to see what can happen. So then she can go, hey, look, back it. But we haven't heard about that person since, which is probably a telling side. And so, yeah, the vaccine causing magnetism, I mean, if it could do that, I mean, that would be a reason for me to get the vaccine. I mean, who doesn't want to be Magneto? Give me 30 of those things, I don't want to move a truck. If you could make someone magnetized by a vaccine, and it's like a lot of these really out there theories or issues people have, when you dig deeper into it, it leads you down a whole world of crazy. Because the next question is, wait, is having magnetism a thing? Is it a bad thing? It sounds pretty cool and maybe quite useful for some people. I mean, you could, window cleaners, they could scale buildings, policemen could do stuff like that. It'd be useful at work. You could just summon something like Star Wars style, just put it in your hand. I mean, I would love to have magnetic powers, and if a vaccine could do it, all the better. But yeah, I think then you have to go through maybe follow the logic that maybe there's a bigger theory that magnets are bad, or there's too much magnetism and that is bad, and you've created a vaccine which gave me magnetism, so that's bad. But I mean, I'd be really keen for magnetism. My phone's 5G hasn't improved. That was another thing that was happening last year in the pandemic. People were burning down a whole lot of towers. Bill Gates, his kind of factoring into the whole conspiracy of COVID seems to have gone down a bit. I mean, I think some of that is because he's been keeping a bit of a low profile since his separation in his marriage, but also because no one is talking about the AstraZeneca vaccine, the Oxford one. That just seems to be tanking. It's all about Pfizer. Of course, in America they have multiple different ones. They all seem to be pretty similar in number and effectiveness, but the government's picked the winning horse on the Pfizer one, and that's stood up despite multiple trials, despite multiple time, and now variants. And there's a lot of, oh my gosh, I need to flip the camera around. There's a forklift truck and a container truck just getting super close to each other, trying to turn into each other at the same time. So I guess that shows we're out of level 4, guys, because our usual ways to kill ourselves are returning. But yeah, so vaccine crazy theories, they're happening. I think in the discussions I've had, most people are giving really good dialogue and questions. They're wanting to know about side effects and chances of that with COVID and without COVID, which I think is makes me hopeful that, yeah, forget about the rest of the world. We can do this. We can push forward. We can lead everyone on this. Seems like America's given up now. They would much rather die than have than someone tell them what to do, particularly the government. And now they're giving the vaccines away to other countries, which is it's really quite legendary. But it does show that I think they've done it. And to be fair, we've only really started vaccinating in the last 2 weeks at a kind of open season kind of way, just everyone get a vaccine. And I feel good that our vaccination rate is just soaring, because that's what it's done in the Pacific. The Pacific, particularly places like Fiji, where once again they've seen COVID. They've had lots of people die, way over 600 people at least dead. I mean, that's massive. So I think that lever is a tried and tested one, and so we've capitalized on that. And I think we've got to really make sure these things are available. The best information is available. There's no barriers which are getting away, because if maybe, fingers crossed, we go to level 2 or level 1, I think the drive people would have to get the COVID vaccine will probably disappear. I mean, we'll probably forget. I mean, most people are talking about Delta, interchanging Delta with COVID. And of course, it wasn't long ago, we didn't even know what Delta was. Delta didn't have a name. It was called the Indian variant. That was when we had the South African variant, the blah, blah, blah variant. So we have no idea. And I guess my plea is that we don't know how long the COVID vaccines are going to be easily available. There's a whole lot of manufacturing. The drug company has to be making enough money out of it. So thank goodness we phoned a friend in Spain and Denmark to get these vaccines. But, you know, it's like the flu vax probably. Like, if they see a different market, who knows if they're going to keep producing them, we're going to have access to them. At the moment we do, so we need to go full steam. So interested now to see the lines in the takeaways. So this is probably New Zealand's busiest road for takeaways. It has every takeaway you could possibly name on the strip. And even yesterday, when I was leaving New Lynn, just so many, just such a huge line in the drive-through. The drive-through. I mean, it should be renamed. It should just be called the holding pen for takeaways, because the lines are just so big. And yeah, and I think that was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So yeah, the lines are interesting because they're really problematic. The thing that does happen, which is a bit of a different public health issue, is you can see the ease on the supermarket pressure soon as the takeaways open at level 3. And it is quite scary because clearly we eat a lot of fast food. But I hope these businesses do get the bounce back that we've seen before. But yeah, gridlock traffic on this road for a few days. Anyway, more to come in the vaccine. I'm going to try and put some of the crazy videos in there